Merry Christmas, everyone. Welcome to another Singerreise video podcast. My name is Jonathan Silvia, and I'm your host. Thanks for joining us. If you haven't heard, Singerreise is now on Patreon. You can find out all about it on the previous video. I hope that you'll take a moment to either take a look at that video or to visit the Patreon website, and then consider financially supporting Singerreise. And of course, if you have any questions about how Patreon works, feel free to send me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So Singerreise is about the life of a working opera singer. And especially at this time of year, during Christmas, that life can get pretty hectic. There's a lot of things that come together. There are Christmas concerts, for example, and doing work at church. All the while I'm rehearsing the next opera, La Traviata at Seattle Opera, and while I'm trying to learn Winterreise and making these videos. So piecing all of that together makes for a pretty busy life. This year, I get to sing some Bach. There were no Messiahs this year. I sang just a couple weeks ago with the Kirkland Choral Society. We did the first cantata in the Weihnachts Oratorium by Bach. That includes the piece Großer Herr or Starker König, a little aria for the bass. I get to do that same piece again on New Year's Day at my church. So, today we're going to look at Großer Herr. You can consider this your Christmas present from Sarah and me. Just as with all of the Winterreise pieces, we'll take a few minutes here to take a look at Großer Herr and talk about some of my few favorite tidbits from it. First, let's talk about that weird-looking B-shaped thing that you find in the German title. That is called an Eszett, and it functions exactly the same as a double S. In fact, in modern German, they almost don't use the Eszett at all, but you'll still find it here and there in some of the publications. I also wanted to talk about Lieder versus arias. Here in Singerreise, we've been looking at the work Winterreise. Winterreise is a song cycle filled with German Lieder. We use that word Lieder to describe art songs. The word itself just simply means songs in German, but is a specific type of song. Art songs involve just the solo singer and some sort of accompaniment, usually a piano. It can be found with other Lieder, often in sets or cycles, intended to be performed by the same solo singer, maybe in a recital sort of setting. Instead, Großer Herr is a German aria. The main difference between Lieder and arias is that arias usually come from an opera or an oratorio. These are larger works, sometimes staged works, that involve a number of different singers and an orchestra. Of course, for today, our orchestra is just Sarah Silvia at the piano, and she's playing an orchestral reduction, which means all of the orchestra parts condensed onto a piano part. Großer Herr is from the Weihnachts Oratorium, or the Christmas Oratorio. But it's not a usual oratorio in the sense of having characters and following a story. Instead, Bach wrote this as 6 cantatas. Now, a cantata is kind of oratorio-like. There's an orchestra and a choir and some soloists, but it's also a lot like a church service. It's the two of them mixed up together and in miniature. So Bach wrote a ton of cantatas. In the Weihnachts Oratorium, there are 6 cantatas, and these cantatas are meant to be done on Christmas Day and the days following after. After all, everybody knows that Christmas isn't just one day, it's actually a full 12, just like the psalm says. Großer Herr is in the very first cantata of the Weihnachts Oratorium. That means it was meant to be performed on Christmas Day itself. It comes right after a little duet between the bass soloist and a choir singing a chorale. Now, in the case of Bach cantatas, the soloists usually aren't actual characters per se, but they act more like observers or commentators on what is actually happening. In this case, the bass soloist is commenting on how ironic it is that the mighty Lord and the creator and the sustainer of the whole world has to come down here to sleep in a hard crib, the manger. Overall, the piece is joyful and regal, and there's lots of trumpet fanfares and drums accompanying. Seeing as this is a Bach aria, there's a ton more that we could say about this piece. For example, we could talk about it being a da capo aria, and what does da capo mean? Or we could be talking about the second section and whether we should do that fast or slow, or how appropriate it is to use ornaments in Bach. We could also talk about the intense imagery and meaning that Bach writes into his scores and the instrumentation. We could even be talking about how difficult it is and the special types of singers that Bach requires with his vocal writing. But we'll have to leave all of that for another video, I think. For now, though, I wanted to offer one last reminder to consider supporting Singerreise by joining us on Patreon. One of the perks for that, for example, is that you can listen to all of the musical numbers that we do here on Singerreise with all of these pesky introductions. Well, for now, Merry Christmas, and I hope you enjoy this presentation of Große Herr.
Die ganze Welt